10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and welcome to my review of The Empress of Mars. Hey viewers, Purple Celery here, and welcome to my review of Season 10, Episode 9 of Doctor Who, The Empress of Mars. So, I had a few reservations going into this episode. It was written by Mark Gatiss, and this is no disrespect intended to Mr. Gatiss. I think he's a good writer. His work on Sherlock has been exceptional, but I have to say that his scripts for Doctor Who haven't been among my most favourite Doctor Who episodes, and I'm referring here to ones such as Robot of Sherlock and Sleep No More. So I went into this with fairly low expectations. Luckily, however, it was better than what I thought it would be. It was like a solid, fun episode. It was a bit paint by the numbers. It wasn't the most memorable Doctor Who episode that I've ever watched, but you know what? It was okay. So, The Empress of Mars sees the Doctor, Bill and Nardole travelling back to 1881 to Mars, where a bunch of British redcoats are already there drilling into the planet, and they're accompanied by an ice warrior who they think is the last of his kind, but of course he's not. And their drilling works wake up the Empress of Mars. Mayhem results. There are a couple of interesting themes that I thought could have been developed further, but they weren't. The first of those was the Doctor taking sides, and he did sort of give a bit of a throwaway line about, what side he was on. Was he on the side of the invaders, or was he on the side of the creatures who were being invaded, bearing in mind that they were very likely to defeat the invaders quite conclusively. I thought that was a bit of an interesting moral dilemma that could have been developed further, but wasn't. As it turned out, the Doctor pretty much had no hesitation in coming down on the side of the human invaders on the basis that they were going to be, killed pretty easily. Another theme that I thought was sort of touched on but not really developed was the whole hubris of the British Army of the 19th century, and basically thinking that they were entitled to take anything and do anything and invade wherever they liked. And I thought that was interesting, but it wasn't really explored all that far. One aspect of this episode that confused me a bit was the whole subplot of the Colonel, who was supposedly hanged for cowardice and desertion. Now, granted, I am no expert on British military history, but I have to ask, would somebody of his class and rank really have been sentenced to death? Because I think it's more likely that the whole thing would have been quietly swept under the carpet and he would have been given a dishonourable discharge from the army or something. But if he really was sentenced to death, wouldn't they have executed him by firing squad rather than hanging him? And another question that comes to mind was, okay, so the rope snapped and they couldn't kill him, but surely his conviction would still stand, so how did he end up back in uniform? And why was Catchglove the only person who knew about it? I feel that was pretty much a story in itself, which was never really properly explained. That said though, there were many little things that I did enjoy about this episode. For example, I thought that the opening scene with the countdown was pretty good. I also really enjoyed Bill's movie references. I also liked how they had a black soldier in the British Army. I had to do a bit of research into this, but apparently black men could join the British Army back in those days. And because there were no segregation laws in Britain, unlike America at that time, it was rare but entirely possible for a black man to marry a white woman, which I found quite interesting. And something else that I loved was the appearance of Alpha Centauri. How awesome was that? Alpha Centauri has not been seen since the 1970s John Pertwee Peladon episodes, so it was great to see her make an appearance. And speaking of appearances, once again we see Missy. Now this raises the question of what happened to the TARDIS. Why did the TARDIS suddenly start, controlling itself, and why did it take Nardole straight back to the university? I think that somehow Missy or the Master is behind that event happening. It was clear that Missy was not supposed to be piloting the TARDIS, as evidenced by the Doctor's look of shock and almost fear when he saw her inside the TARDIS. And even more intriguing was the question that she asked him, "Are you all right?" Is it a case of Missy developing a newfound sense of compassion, or is something wrong with the Doctor? And another thing, Missy went back to Mars in the TARDIS to get the Doctor and Bill. Why did she do that? She'd been stuck in the vault for years, if not decades. She had like a fully functioning TARDIS. She could have gone anywhere she wanted to, but she went back to Mars to get the Doctor. Why? So as I said earlier, this was a solid but not a particularly spectacular episode. So this week I'm giving The Empress of Mars 3 out of 5 wombats. So if you've liked this review, please give me a like and subscribe to my channel, leave your comments and thoughts below in the comments section, and join me next week as I look at Season 10, Episode 10, The Eaters of Light. This is Purple Celery, over and out.